Hello, guys. Welcome to this new edition of Mind Podcast. This is a very unique Mind Podcast. I will disclose what was the intention first. You, as before I start, you must have seen our familiar face from the last podcast, and I'm going to reintroduce him in a second. But this was supposed to be Karnataka elections podcast, which we are going to do in the next week. We are actually getting data ready for that, and we were supposed to record in the next 2 days. But then the developments of Punjab took went at such a frenetic pace and just went at such a crazy sort of tangent that we had to do a part two or a follow-up podcast of what we did with Rohit sooner than what we expected. अब तो लगता है जिस तरीके से we have to do indefinite parts 3 4 5 6 जहां तक ये सिलसिला खत्म नहीं होता. But because we talked about the history, we talked about everything, but I really want to discuss at the consequences of what happened with the whole Amritpal Singh situation, with what Gyani Harpreet Singh, who's the Jathedar of the Akal Takht, who's saying. A lot of people have confusion about what the Akal Takht is or what the role of the Jathedar of the Akal Takht is, and what is going on. And if they say the things that Amritpal Singh is saying, what kind of situation are we headed in? Because right there was a little bit of a difference in what the Jathedar was saying and Amritpal was saying, but it seems like the paths are converging. I'm not saying that they are together. I'm saying that the statements, even if the statements seem to be in sync, that's a problem right there. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, author, columnist, expert on politics, and especially a keen watcher of Punjab politics and what is happening is Rohit Pathania, our favorite Pahadi, Rohit Pathania, as I would like to say,
Thank you,
before the
Aadit.
other Pahadis slaughter me.
Yeah.
I'm just being facetious, but thank you, Rohit, for doing this at such a short notice. But I know you feel as strongly about this as I do, and it's crazy what is going on. Absolutely crazy. So can you before we get into and show the links, right? And mind you, there are some insane links that I'm about to show you about what I've heard. So can you explain to our viewers what has happened? The Punjab police tried to catch Amritpal, and then Amritpal has been all over the map of India and then Nepal. Likely, what is going on?
Yeah, so a very good point to ask, Adit. And so this happened last Saturday, right? And there was news that the Punjab police was doing a crackdown operation of sorts. Amritpal Singh Sandhu was supposed to go to this samagam taking place in Nakodar, which is in Jalandhar district, close to the city of Jalandhar. But he managed to escape the arrest and roundup that was taking place. He managed to slip through the nets. It seems people let him pass through even through toll plazas, as video footage showed. And subsequently, he has been spotted all over sort of like North India, including Udham Singh Nagar, including Delhi, including Kurukshetra. Even for that matter, one of the latest ones was him being seen in Pilibhit, Lakhimpur Khiri, which is literally the Nepal border. And even on another podcast, the former DGP of Jammu Kashmir, SP Vaid, had speculated that in all likelihood, his own sources were telling him that he may have gotten onto the truckers' bandwagon and eventually reached Nepal, because a lot of trucks that go uh, from India to Nepal actually follow on the same route that he has been spotted along.
So you give me a great sort of segue into this, that Amritpal likely in Nepal is this report published by Indian Express based on a report in the Kathmandu Post with a new picture of him. There is a new photograph of Amritpal and his associate Papalpreet Singh, I think with beer or something like that, if I'm not mistaken, that is on social
Yeah,
media.
yeah. So
And
now even
uh,
the look is very radically different, it seems, from what he was behaving like. The clothes have disappeared.
hmm.
He's wearing different colored turbans. The works, basically, to try and hide his identity as
Exactly.
much as he can.
So both meanwhile in selfie, Amritpal and Papalpreet both holding a beverage can. Yeah, it's a bit rich to just call it a beverage can. Everyone knows what beverage it is. Both are
Yeah.
seen wearing sweatshirts and with the preacher donning a maroon turban in the popular style. And in the CCTV footage, he was also seen that. And the source of the selfie, again, they're saying is not known till the filing of this report with the top Punjab officers. are saying they are not aware who released it on social media. So there is just
Hmm.
so many problems with this story. And the Punjab police has done it. They so to give a sort of a perspective, and that's why I'm showing the report, because it's a pretty
Hmm.
decent cumulative report which actually shows where he I mean 18th March, right now today I have 27th March, so it's been 9 days,
Hmm.
right, when we are
9 days.
recording this podcast. And he allegedly was harbored by Papalpreet Singh's friend at her home in Shahabad in Kurukshetra. So they're already
Yeah.
crossed one state border, gone from Haryana in 19th, according to this theory. Then the Baljit Kaur was arrested on 25th. Then there was another CCTV footage showing talking on the mobile phone in Patiala. So did he
Hmm.
go from there? It's impossible to think that he went from Kurukshetra back into Punjab or back into Patiala.
Exactly.
But ye,
Exactly.
but ye ho kya raha hai, right? So now they are invoked the NSA, and the 8 of his associates are now in the Dibrugarh jail in Assam, if I'm not mistaken. So it's released 197 out of 353 as of Sunday out from the preventative custody. So it's a holy mess in Punjab. No pun
Yeah. Yeah.
intended, but it is a mess, right?
Oh,
And
it's a total
uh,
mess. Punjab police let it happen in such a shoddy manner is something that everybody should really be questioning them for. Was it an intent? Was there some degree of intention to, probably just let him go? Is something that keeps coming up now, thanks to this.
no and no, and let's put it in perspective. More than the greater intention, I'm worried about another thing. This cannot have happened until he had some internal help from some officer, some tucha lafanga here or there. Someone has to be na. Because you are talking,
Exactly.
unless and until we are talking that the incompetence is on such a high level that he'd slipped through the cracks
Exactly.
when a big manhunt was launched. I don't think that is the reason. I think it is compliance on some more than incompetence.
Let me give you some context since you put it that way. The Punjab police arrived at Tejinder Pal Singh's Bagga house to arrest him at 4:30 a.m. or 5 a.m. in the morning. But Amritpal Singh Sandhu's case, we see the Punjab police trying to arrest him in broad daylight. I mean, how? I mean, that is, I think, good enough to tell how badly the whole situation was planned, whether it was intent. And it could have been definitely the case that there were elements that allowed him to get away, because we've seen footage of him crossing the toll plaza into Haryana and people literally folding their hands in reverence to him.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's on air for everybody, it's for public consumption. That tells you, that makes
Absolutely.
me very worried. That makes me very worried. I mean, and you know what the problem with me is that it brings back memories of what I remember about what used to happen in Kashmir. For instance, like Yasin Malik was allowed to escape from the Shere Kashmir hospital in Srinagar because
Uh,
the doctors were in collusion with the terrorists.
yeah, and before people wondering, before people are wondering कि शेरे कश्मीर नाम कहाँ से आया है, look up where the name शेरे कश्मीर came from, and look up, read more. आपका annoyance और बढ़ जाएगा. But I only want to piss people off a little bit, not across two states of India, just one state for
No,
now.
I agree.
I mean,
But it's, I mean, but
my
yeah,
my
but you get the point, Adit. I
my
mean,
friend
it's very frustrating.
My friend Sunanda will have a 1 hour podcast just to tell you on what about the
Oh
history of
yeah,
Shere Kashmir,
oh yeah,
maybe also on
oh yeah.
Punjab. But yeah, ye baat to sahi hai. Anyways,
Definitely. But I
keep
mean, you
going,
get the
Rohit.
gist,
What were you
right?
saying?
This is a problem that we've seen in the past. Even in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, we saw similar things being done by elements in the administration. And that's very worrisome for me. Are you trying to say that there are people in the administration who are willing to subvert the Indian interest just for some interest, some material or other interests that they have? It's it's a question, it's a very big question mark for me. And
Hmm.
how are such
So
people
then,
allowed to be part of the administration? I mean, Jammu
so
Kashmir, we
and
saw
let
the example for the longest time.
yeah, and let me show you the issues we are going to face because of what has happened here. Now we
Exactly.
have the Akal Takht giving such statements. So read this.
Yeah.
There is a 24-hour ultimatum on the Punjab government to release the supporters of Amritpal Singh. And basically the decision, there was a panthik gathering where there was a 24-hour ultimatum. So what the hell are they going to do if they don't, right? There's Tarnadal, and then Harpreet Singh gave a 2-minute time to each Sikh representative, and people were just wearing Sikh robes and they had gathered in the building. My point is, I mean, this is a visual of the meeting. So now
Mm-hmm.
the Akal Takht is actually taking the same sort of thing. They are basically making those those demands that they used to do, that Amritpal is doing. I think that they talked about, there is a Sikh faith or something. I forget what they said. They launched a campaign against something, or about purification campaign or something like that. Basically an issue that Amritpal has been advocating. Akal Takht has done the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, Amrit
So
Sanchar basically was.
can you explain about, a little bit about the Akal Takht, what the role of the Jathedar is, and then come to this point for
So,
people who may
Akal
not
Takht
know.
is basically the highest temporal body of the Sikh tradition, and it was established by the sixth Guru, because he wanted to show that there is a power that is actually higher than even the Mughal power in Hindustan at that time. So that's why it was called the Akal Takht. It was the Takht of the, yeah, God, and that's where the concept of, as per the Sikh tradition, of the temporal and the spiritual realms were basically brought together. So the Miri Piri concept that you get to hear a lot in Sikh tradition is what basically is referring to when you're talking about Akal Takht. So whoever is the Jathedar of the Akal Takht basically has the power or the authority. The Jathedar is basically a nominee that is decided by a council of Pant Pyare and other eminent Sikh that you may want to involve. And the Akal Takht Jathedar then has the power to basically dictate to the Sikh community what they need to understand, what they need to do, basically all things that are related to the tradition and its practices.
And the little translation that I know, Akal Takht means eternal throne or eternal
Yes,
woe,
yes.
because Akal means throughout Kals and so forth. And
Basically
there is,
beyond
I mean,
Kal, beyond time also that way.
correct. And it has had a lot of interesting sort of people. Like there are a lot of questionable people that have nominated been as the Jathedars, right? So it's
Yes.
not like in the late 80s and the early 90s you had a lot of controversial people take the thing in the pre KPS Gill and the post KPS Gill era.
Yeah, yeah. Can I just give one example? The man who had killed Gurbachan Singh, the head of the Nirankari mission
Huh.
in the 80s, was made the Akal Takht Jathedar just to get him out
Goodness
of prison.
gracious. Wow.
For that matter, one Jathedar, there's also the one unique precedent of one Jathedar being expelled, by the way, and made
Wow, I
Tankhaiya.
did not know that.
Joginder Singh
so so,
Vedanti.
so so basically what we are saying is ki a lot of these chairmen, or the lot of this have questionable records in making certain statements and stuff, and not every one of them, uh, they see the problem in Punjab about this panthik politics thing is there are so many factions. So the Akal Takht Jathedar wants to be at the top of all the factions, right? So they will try and make the statement based on what is popular amongst these factions. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So the Jathedar eventually is ascribing to what the SGPC is telling it. Let's be honest, in many ways. And whoever controls the SGPC basically,
Uh,
in a way, uh, coerces the Akal Takht Jathedar Sahab to take a position
and
necessarily
SGPC, for people
around
who don't know, is Shiromani Gurudwara
Shiromani
Prabandhak
Gurdwara
Committee.
Prabandhak Committee. Basically, it is the elected body of Gurdwara managing representatives that is elected every few years.
Hmm.
So, in that context, it's basically the voice of the SGPC that gets amplified by
Hmm.
the Akal Takht Jathedar Sahab. So,
Yeah.
even if at one personal level he may or may not agree with it,
Hmm.
it's basically a voice of a certain section that controls the SGPC at any time.
And SGPC was a very interesting thing, where because Gurucharan Singh Tora probably is the controlled SGPC for the longest time. First for 13 years, then for 4 years, and then for another year in 2004. I think in 2003, 2004. I think when he passed away in 2004, is
Yeah.
a record for 27 years. I think something like that,
Yeah.
and stuff. So
Which
and
is
then
so
uske
ironic because Gurcharan Singh Tora was known to be a card carrying communist किसी जमाने में.
हाँ नहीं,
and
पर पंजाब की
was
हिस्ट्री विद
accused,
कम्युनिस्ट
by
भी
the
बहुत
way.
इंटरेस्टिंग है ना. हाँ.
Because the elite has always been communist somehow or the other,
हाँ.
which is either feudal or communist. Let's put it this way, which is very strange in a state that unfortunately still has huge vestiges of feudal mindsets.
या. हम्म.
I mean, it's very difficult to explain where it comes from all the time,
हम्म.
but it's there. And the only real counter narrative at a popular level has been a communist one in Punjab.
हम्म.
Though it does
हम्म.
not translate into electoral victories necessarily, but it's been there.
हम्म.
For that matter, I don't know how many people know this, but the Naxal movement was the strongest in Punjab outside of Bengal in the late in the 60s.
This is
So yeah,
interesting. Most people think that it is in Andhra Pradesh or something.
in the 60s particularly. So
In the 60s. Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
60s, yeah. So it was given. I mean, even in that era, the Punjab police gave a really really crushed it that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
Um,
continued. So anyway, so Gurcharan
hmm,
Singh Tora apparently was accused of filling up the entire SGPC institution with left card-carrying communists as granthis and parties back in the day.
hmm, hmm.
And he was considered
Unbelievable.
to be tutored by Harkishan Singh Surjit, of all the people.
Huh, I was just going to say, so Harkishan Singh Surjit also was a communist.
Yeah, yeah. And he was the one
So
who was basically considered the godfather of Gurcharan Singh Tora back in the day.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, it is ridiculous. And then what you had was interesting. After that, you had the last 2 years where Jagir Kaur was there, jiska almost conviction ho chuka tha. Right
Yeah, yeah.
now,
She was convicted for an honor killing of a daughter.
yeah, and then the conviction was overturned or something like that. As a, the hua
It's
tha, but
I think it's under appeal or something of that sort going on even now.
uh,
So that's
but
the
what
reason
what
why
I'm
she was
saying is,
able to
from there,
continue.
you have now, I think Harjinder Singh Dhami is there. So
Harjinder
basically,
Singh Dhami is the current.
so it is impossible to think that SGPC and Akal Takht are not on the same page. They're always on the same page. The
Hmm.
question is, what with the statement that the Jathedar has made, what is the Akal Takht doing? But let's come to the role of the Indian state here, right? Indian state has almost let them flourish, these organizations within, and it's not posed a threat because, post Brindanwale, we thought everything was under control. And threat, I don't mean the organizations pose a threat, but if they are pandering to the far right, to the Khalistanis thing. It was said that the K word was a majorly out of India word, and then you saw these abominable attacks on consulates in San Francisco and in London. So I mean, in US, in Canada, less in US, more in Canada and UK, but certainly in on the west coast of US, there is a presence of some Khalistani elements. uh, but we were told that in Punjab they did not exist, or the room. But then you have Simranjit Singh Maan getting re-elected, and that was your first flag. And मैंने कितने लोगों को ये पूछा था, I asked a lot of Punjab watchers, who go into, and my issue with a lot of these Punjab watchers is, whenever I talk about, ask a legitimate question, they go into the ki hoya sade Punjab nu, and then they go start talking about this 80s, and I'm like, bhai mujhe Yash Chopra wala Punjab nahi chahiye, please give me a real perspective. I don't want nostalgia, right? Because I am as concerned about Punjab, maybe a little less than, because I have never stayed in it, but as much as an Indian citizen would be, more than an Indian citizen. But I don't feel the same way as a Punjabi, nostalgic about it. So I appreciate where that sentiment comes from. But the issue about Punjab here is that, why did Simranjit Singh Maan get 2.5 lakh votes? I don't care that 15% people did not show up to vote. I don't care that the margins were less. It doesn't matter. For me, that man is not worth more than 15-20,000 votes about some vestiges of the vote. The man got 2 lakh more votes than what he's ever gotten in
Yeah.
the last few years, right? So that was a real question. Or wo koi jawab hi nahi de raha tha. No one.
No, because nobody wants to be, let's put it this way, honest about what really happened there or
Hmm,
understand exactly what happened there.
hmm,
And let's put these two things in context.
hmm,
Uh, I've said this before to you, Adit. The
hmm,
assembly elections, he was second in Amargarh,
hmm,
right? From actually losing deposits to becoming
hmm,
second in the Vidhan Sabha assembly in Amargarh,
hmm,
right? So that was the first flag, in fact, even before the Lok Sabha bypoll. And the more important thing now you have to realize is the reason why he gets votes and not Balwant Singh Rajwana's sister in the same election. Like, you have to realize that because there is a section within the Panth, the Sikh Panth, that votes behind the Akalis that has been absolutely frustrated with the Akali Dal Badal, basically. Let's put it this way. Simranjit Singh Man's rise, in a way, is an indicator of the competition within the leadership space of the Panth, the political leadership space of the Panth. Let's be very clear about it. So there are various shades, okay? There's one shade that is probably extremist but not anti-India. There's one shade that is moderate but anti-India. It's a very paradoxical situation in Punjab, but that's how it works
Yeah.
out.
No, like
So,
most places in India, it is
yeah,
very
yeah.
the more things are same, the more things are different.
I always give this analogy. I'm tired of giving this analogy now. People really need to understand how elections work in how politics works in Tamil Nadu, and they'll understand Punjab like the back of their hand immediately. I'm not even kidding now. The Dravidian model and the Akali model is nearly the same for a variety of reasons, including the ideological moorings, or for that matter, the way they were basically pampered to by a certain British elite, or even for that matter, the politics that happened post 60s in Punjab, which was a big, especially the late 90s and the 2000s decade, which was literally a copy of what DMK used to do in Tamil Nadu. So, when you see that, it's not surprising. This paradox will always exist, and it is in that vacuum of leadership, as I was saying, is where somebody like Simranjit Singh Mann managed to secure votes, because there's a certain section who didn't want to vote,
But
and there
what
was a
is
certain section that
no, but
was
I'll tell
keen
you
to
the
vote, but not for the Akalis,
but
as the
so
Delhi says.
Punjab has a strange predicament because Punjab has had a very, I mean, earlier Hindus were in majority and now the Hindus are about 40% in Punjab, right? About between 35 and 40%, right? That number is thing because a lot of, how many Hindus are now Sikhs or something. And that's another long podcast we'll have to get into.
Very long podcast,
But
but yeah, that's because of the Pepsu and all that. Yeah. So,
पेप्सी अब जो भी है चलो 30%
mm,
प्लस तो है 35% तो
huh,
है ही हिंदूज इन पंजाब द
yeah, yeah,
पॉपुलेशन राइट एंड यू हैव पॉकेट्स लाइक द होशियारपुर एंड द गुरदासपुर बेल्ट
yeah.
फगवाड़ा दैट्स अमृतसर में कुछ लोग है
बिल्कुल,
तो
बिल्कुल,
मतलब
बिल्कुल.
देयर आर सिटीज एंड स्टफ लाइक दैट स्पेशली अर्बन in Punjab, there was Akali used to get the Panthic vote. BJP would get the urban Hindu vote, some of the urban Hindu
Mhm.
vote. Congress would get the rest of the Hindu vote. And then some of the so-called moderate Sikh or the middle of the Sikh road vote, that agreed with the captain and so forth. That was the composition. So unlike say a Dravidian issue in thing where there are some splits across the caste line, or in Jammu and Kashmir, like what you said, कि Jammu and Kashmir में ये होता है ना कि the government in the opposition becomes more conservative depending on whoever is in power. Unlike there in Punjab, there was a very small percent of swing votes. So swing
Yeah.
आपका होता था, but it was not massive swings.
Yeah.
Then you have now suddenly in the last 10, 12 years with the corruption allegations against Akali Dal, Prakash Singh Badal, retiring essentially is like 98, I think,
Mhm.
I forget, high 90s.
94,
Uh,
yeah.
94, sorry, yeah. So, but I mean, hope he lives a long life. But
Basically,
my
ineffective, yeah.
ineffective, so he's not active, right? So after that Sukhbir has unable to tap into that after that surprise election win of 2012 where Akali Dal bucked the trend and along with the BJP they came
Mhm.
back to power. It's been a problem. So then do you think since then, since the last 7 8 years, and Amrinder Singh has been very fierce in his opposition, not just to Khalistan but to Khalistani elements even within the diaspora. So this conservative Panthic vote, do you think it was up for grabs in the last 5 6 years and people just didn't pay attention to it?
On the Amrinder Singh point, actually, he is also flirted enough with Khalistan, तो वो तो अपने में एक अलग स्टोरी है.
हाँ हाँ नहीं
कभी
मैं तो ये
सुनाएंगे आराम से.
पिछले 10 15 साल की इंडिया में पॉलिटिकल रियलिटीज की मेमोरीज बहुत शॉर्ट होती है ना सो पीपल
Exactly.
फॉरगेट व्हेन पीपल हैव स्विच्ड एंड दे हैवंट स्विच्ड
Yeah,
सो
yeah. And that's true for nearly all mainstream leaders of the past in Punjab anyway. So that's a different story. But yeah, coming back to the question of what was going on. See, you have to go back to the point of 2013 onwards, basically, what was going on. And it was a realization that the Panthic vote was clearly slipping away from Akali Dal. And I give you two good, very examples of that. 2013 is when Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale is declared Qaum da Shahid by the Akal Takht Jathedar. And there's a memorial being built for him on official orders. Okay. And by the way, at the same time, if you look at 2012 numbers, the BJP strike rate was nearly 100%.
नो दैट इज 2007
Even
2007 में
even in
नहीं 20
16,
20 no
12.
No, so 2012 में it was 12 out of 23, 2007 में 19 or 20 out of 23.
Sorry. So
But
basically,
still,
point was that
but
they realized
हाँ,
that
but
it was the
50
BJP that got them to power and not
exactly.
them their own votes.
So
So
2012 में एक बड़ी चीज हुई. Akali
hmm,
Dal realized that, and Shiv Sena realized that in BMC, where Shiv Sena was stopped at 80 and BJP 32 got them over the line in
yeah,
BMC.
exactly. So they realized that the shift was already taking place. They were smart enough to realize that, and that's when the whole Panthik cause movement. They tried doing all of that, and the Bayadbi incidents, by the way, happen in that tenure as well, in the last tenure of the Akalis. So the the Gurdu, and there was not just one of the page of the ang being torn of the Guru Granth Sahib. There was also the case of this missing swarups, by the way. So swarups of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib literally disappeared. There was no account of them, and that also became a major problem for these guys. And they were and in Behbal Kala, when under the protest, during the protest, police opened fire on protesters and killed, like, I think 10 to 16
Hmm.
in police. And that those many people died in police firing. Their popularity literally, I mean, they've not been able to recover from that to date. I'll put it that way.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
So
Sukhbir Badal was given the how to say, the blame entirely, because everybody knew who called the shots,
hmm.
and the Home Ministry was also
Hmm.
under Sukhbir Badal at the time, if I recall correctly. So
Hmm.
the trend was already going on. So the frustration had started. Now in Punjab, what used to happen is that because there were other communities that used to rally behind the Congress,
Hmm.
there was a breakaway from the Panthik vote also that took place, that rallied behind the Congress, that got them to the astounding majority that they got in Punjab, really,
Hmm.
which was, I think, 78 seats or 80 seats, something of that sort, in the 117 member assembly, by the way. Keep that in mind.
Hmm. Wow.
So that told you that the people were absolutely, so they were again signs of people being really fed up with the system, and this was like a last chance for the Congress party. So we will vote even you out.
Out. Hmm. And that's what
So
happened.
and that's what happened eventually, because Amrinder Singh went very slow on the cases of the sacrileges,
Hmm.
right? Even on the corruption cases against the Badals, that made them extremely unpopular across Punjab,
Hmm. Hmm.
across the divides of communities. In fact,
Correct.
really got to them. Uh, Sidhu tried to undo the damage by being the opposition leader for the Congress, but didn't work out for them. I'll put
आजकल
it
तो
that way.
सिद्धू भी याद नहीं है किसी को. सिद्धू माइट बी ऑफेंडेड दैट इसका रिलीज का डिमांड किसी ने नहीं किया.
Oh well, nobody wants him. None of these political leaders want him. Let's be honest about it.
And Amrinder Singh was absolutely right about Sidhu being completely woe. And to think that he was given a Rajya Sabha seat once, he let it go and then went into complete downspin, right?
Yeah.
And what is interesting is the situation in Punjab where Aam Aadmi Party has a swing of 18.2% in the favor. Congress goes down to 23%, and Akali Dal goes down to 18%, right? And then
Yeah.
you have the BJP still holding its 8%. It is bizarre. I think amongst the three parties, only BJP
No,
held on to its vote share.
exactly. Keep this in mind, Adit.
Yeah.
2019 Lok Sabha elections, एक सीट मिली थी ना आम आदमी पार्टी को. People forget that,
Huh? Yes,
and they've
yes.
lost that seat also subsequently.
Correct. Absolutely. Sangrur.
Yeah.
So,
So what standing does the Aam Aadmi Party have then? That
nothing,
clearly
nothing.
tells you that it was never a vote for the Aam Aadmi Party. It was a vote against the other two parties, basically.
Huh. And then you have the 31% OBC, 32% Dalit population, and then your upper caste is 33, out of which the Jat Sikh is about 21% vote, right?
Yeah.
And then within the Sikh community, there is a lot of friction between the Jat Sikhs and the Mazhabi Sikhs and stuff like that. Their leadership, including on this, where essentially, if I correct me if I'm wrong, but this whole Khalistani component is seen as a very Jat Sikh dominated vote.
Predominantly, yes.
Predominantly,
Predominantly,
I'm
yes.
not saying wo,
Ah,
maybe the
I mean,
percentages have
that's true.
changed
That's
lately. I,
true.
I don't
It's
know, but
been the
that's what
case.
it
Even
is.
KPS Gill said it, na. It
Yeah.
was a Jet versus Jet ladai.
And I've tweeted this clip of Shekhar Gupta at KPS Gill's memorial where he said
Yeah.
that आप जाट के साथ तभी लड़ाई जीत सकते हो जब लठ अपने हाथ में हो. And they will call me in 1985. They said that they'll call me back after a year. They
Yeah.
did, and then he cleaned up Punjab in 10 years, and here we are. And I don't think for देखो a lot of us people who have been writing about Indian politics are clearly saying Punjab of the 80s, not of the
Yep.
90s. I
Yep.
repeat, of the 90s, mein Punjab was in complete free fall mode because of the post Blue Star, post Bindranwale effects, where everybody had, a lot, not say everybody, but there was a population that had taken up guns, and there people were
Yep.
under fear. So there was the whole cat commando questions and kahan se kahan aa rahe.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I don't think we are there yet, but in the 80s, where the seeds were sown of this issue, where preachers were going about making bizarre statements, we are afraid that we might end up there if something is not done.
See, and I'll tell you why. There's one factor, there are a couple of factors that you see that are literally reminiscent of those days, which includes an absolutely dysfunctional state government which doesn't know what to do. Like there was the case of Surjit Singh Barnala. Uh, and now we are actually seeing signs of a kind of party infighting going on, given how people's portfolios are being taken away
Yeah, yeah.
and things like that going on in Punjab. My
Mm,
bigger worry, though, is that the intellectual environment in Punjab is radically different from what was
mm.
there in the East. There was a strong intellectual move, how to say this, counter being given back then in Punjab. You don't see that today in Punjab.
Where is Punjab Kesri? Where is Lalaji, who took on,
Not just that, even
said,
amongst the, there were Punjabi magazines like Preet Ladi, which is a very famous Punjabi magazine, completed 100 years, in fact. And it's a left of center magazine, essentially. But point is, they were an intellectual force back in the day. You don't see that kind of weightage necessarily to such magazines or such intellectual writing anymore. The kind of people who basically fought the narrative discourse at that level, you don't see them. Plus, even on the ground, the kind of forces, I mean, let's put it this way: the intellectual environment is so suffocating in Punjab that people cannot necessarily go against the popular narrative, because it is very difficult for them to, let's just put it, to not get ostracized if they're going against that narrative. And one example of that was with respect to the Ajnala incident, where we saw, and there was a clear divide there. There were people who were more than willing to give a benefit of doubt to Amritpal Sandhu for the kind of horrible incident he undertook. So I that makes me more worried
yeah,
because
and
there's no
people forget that
intellectual competence.
Lala Jagat Narayan was assassinated in 1981, right? So
Yeah,
people think, yeah, oh, 82, 83 mein hua tha. The reason I say is there were voices that were standing up.
exactly.
Khushwant Singh actually was from the Khalistani movement as well,
Oh yeah,
even though he
Khushwant Singh,
did some very brave
Amritpal
pieces.
Kaur.
Uh,
There were lots of people
yeah,
whose names come in that era.
Tavleen Singh was
Tavleen
taking
Singh,
on, yeah, Shekhar, of course. So, I mean, there were a lot of mainstream media voices. Unfortunately, right now, I feel the mainstream media stopped covering Punjab. I was like, Rahul Gandhi ki baatein karo bhai, but don't forget to talk about Punjab. Don't forget to talk about Amritpal.
the problem is that there is a lot of effort even now to behave in the same apologetic manner about the question that we've been seeing for the last 3 years. There's no significant change taking place in the way we are seeing what has been going on. Instead of siding with the people who stand for you, you're basically giving intellectual cover fire for the kind of people who, I mean, so I'll give you one very good example. I was People keep saying it's an economic issue, it's an economic issue. Are you trying to tell me the per capita income of Punjab in the late 70s, early 80s was very low the way it is now?
It is Punjab is certainly a political issue, and bad
Exactly.
economics cannot cover up the
Exactly.
woe. And yes, you can argue that economically it could have been handled better, but to say that people have turned Khalistan is because of economics is absolute rubbish, and it's a lazy argument.
Exactly. And even more even lazier is the way the Punjab government has approached a lot of the agricultural issues. I'll give you one very good example. Crop diversification budget for this year is just 100 crore rupees. I think even sorry for my strong language, even a donkey knows that you need to diversify crop patterns in Punjab. You needed to do it yesterday, not even today. Let's just put it that way. And today there's a news story in the Mint, which is the business paper of Hindustan Times, which shows that Punjab has now officially been listed as a highly water stressed state by the Central Groundwater Board of India.
Goodness gracious.
So when you see these facts and then you see the kind of, or for that matter, even the way the MSP for Moong that Bhagwan Man government had announced and the really shoddy manner in which it was handled, you eventually ended up only displeasing farmers further. And Moong pulses is something that can actually help also with the diversification and take away from rice to an extent if given the right support by the state government now. There's a pulses MSP given by the center also. I mean, it's not a challenge. But I don't know why these things are not being realized. Instead, the focus is essentially on कि 1,500 रुपए दे दो, 2,000 रुपए दे दो. This kind of मतलब freebie culture. What made you different from the Akalis then? They were giving 2 rupees atta and dal. So how are you going to bring any economic development to the state?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
So I mean, these
deindustrialization took place in the 80s. Sorry, just let me finish this one. So deindustrialization took place in the 80s because the terrorists used to target the communities that were responsible for the industrial development of Punjab in a big way. Those guys went to Haryana, those guys came to Western UP, those guys went to Uttarakhand, those guys went to Himachal and benefited. Those states benefited. Punjab basically ended up being deindustrialized. Instead of trying to revive industry or pushing the central government to take steps on certain things, certain FTAs that are responsible also for Punjab's problems to an extent. Example being like the SAFTA being a problem for the cycle industry of India, and Punjab was
That's
a
right.
major cycle manufacturing hub.
That's right.
Instead of arguing for those or putting, lobbying on those fronts, all you hear is ki, matlab, you are not giving us industry, you're not giving us this, you're not. The government said we'll give a mega textile park for which the Punjab government had to assure 1,000 acres of land. They couldn't do it.
They couldn't
They
do it.
didn't do it. And what we saw instead was there was this forest woodland piece. I call it woodland forest. Others may call it.
Hmm.
I don't think it can qualify as a forest called Mattewada near Ludhiana.
Hmm.
जिसकी वजह से they could not touch the 1,000 acre number because of the
Correct.
protest by the Sanyukt Kisan Morcha.
Correct.
The project went away from Punjab. What do you expect will happen if you keep creating these, keep throwing these curveballs all the time?
No, and in this, all in the name of this, the K word, right? All in the name of this, and then you talk about B and stuff. I mean, it really depends on what kind of society and we are aiming towards. And I'm going to end with this. I mean, we've gone way over 30 minutes, like what we talked. But
Sorry. Yeah.
no. Why are you apologizing? I thank you for your time. I mean, I loved this conversation, but no, I announced as such, so मेरे दिमाग में होता है ना एंकर वाला ये 30 मिनट का
Yeah,
बोल के
yeah,
चला गया,
yeah.
but that's the beauty about this space discussion. बात निकली तो दूर तक जाएगी.
I agree. I agree.
That's the thing. But I'll tell you this: Khalistan in the 80s was a land problem, maybe a society problem. They wanted a piece of land, but societal problem about Sikhs ka ye wo. But then also Bhindanwale was trying to have this religious thing. Amritpal is cloaking it under religion, but he's not projecting himself as a religion guru or something. He's instead trying to do as a Sikh society and a Khalsa society, or what, like how he wants a societal problem to be. So it has evolved into something far more dangerous because they have tried it to spin it into this way how people should live their life and things like that, and
Yeah,
then take matters into your own hands. Like if you think something bad has happened, or what they did, the whole stunt at the police station and
yeah,
things like that. So that's where, and people with a smartphone, right? Here is the danger of getting a smartphone. WhatsApp पे क्या forward हो रहा है, क्या कुछ
yep.
हो रहा है, people living in alternate realities. So how do we stop that? That's what I want to end with, and then our recommendations for this week.
Yeah, I think some steps have started taking place, belated, but I'm glad that it has happened. Some of these propaganda outlets that have been rather active on social media, they've been withheld in India for sure. So that's a very welcome step. I don't want to take names because those guys are absolutely useless, and they'll attract attention if I call their name now. So I don't want them to know. The point is that there were all these channels that were literally amplifying the voice of Amritpal Sandhu as well, because we all know that it was an ISI project. I think it's becoming very evident by now who was doing what. Uh, so that narrative, but the problem is that there is a certain narrative mindset that's still prevalent in sections of Punjab. that need to be tackled. And the fundamental reason for that is because we once again see that the state has sort of abdicated its responsibilities. And the state government really needs to stand up now. I'll give you a very good example of how it needs to stand up. Law and order in Punjab is an absolute joke right now. Sorry for the strong language, but I mean, there's no other way to put it. Because if you're getting 10-minute delivery of hard drugs at your doorstep, you're really in deep, I mean, deep problem. So that has to stop somewhere. If you let this happen, it will continue going. I mean, becoming a problem all the time. And this narco fund, the money that's raised with this narco supply is eventually recycled into terrorism and crime. And so we all know these cycles. Also, the state government has to now basically say enough is enough. We will not tolerate lumpen elements in the state. There needs to be concerted action against the lumpen elements who keep repeatedly becoming the couriers for all these Khalistani mindset diaspora and the handlers on the ground. You can't let them operate so freely. So what happened with the action in Dibrugarh, for instance, is actually a very welcome step that way, because whether we like it or not, there were some good moves done by the Punjab police, which included handing these over under the NSA Act to the NIA, and so these guys ended up in Dibrugarh. So that kind of create removing the people, the troublemakers from the site, that also is a good step. And but that cannot be done all the time by the central government. The state government actually also has to take some steps now. One very problematic thing that happened in the entire episode was when one gangster's interview got aired from Punjab, from the prison in Punjab. Don't we know who was doing it? How did that gangster get
No,
access
no, they
to
were saying कि
internet?
भी हाँ ये पता नहीं कैसे हुआ और क्या हुआ, and I'm like, what do you mean कैसे हुआ और क्या हुआ? ये कोई मूवी चल रही है क्या? I mean,
And that
so
guy is,
yeah.
the worst part is that guy essentially, he's allowed to get away with a lot of things. And it looked like a concerted effort to sort of
Yes.
put the blame on a certain section of society also.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolute rubbish. Absolute
Huh.
rubbish what they tried to
When
spin.
and so these kind of things need to stop somewhere. The
Correct. I agree.
Again, as I said, administration has to buck up and really stand to get counted for itself.
Hmm.
And and really, if you're going to have a temporary DGP for more than 6 months, you're really creating problems for the state. You can't have a
Correct.
temporary DGP for so long now. Enough is
Yeah, I
enough.
agree with you.
These
Agree with you.
basics need to be sorted out. Unfortunately, I am still worried because I don't see them getting sorted anytime soon. Rather, what I'm foreseeing, I hope I'm wrong, is further
Hmm.
anarchy in the state government.
I agree with you completely. So,
Because there is a rift that's coming out in the open, and that rift can go into really bad directions.
नहीं और पता नहीं, to quote Jaspal Sandhu from that famous Mahabharat scene in
Yeah,
जाने भी दो यारो, यार ये हो क्या रहा है?
exactly. Exactly the problem. Nobody is
So
explaining to us कि हो क्या रहा है पंजाब में with respect to the state government's actions.
yeah, and please, like, let's not waste our time in lamenting and all sorts of things. Let's just forget about everything and just look at the what is at stake. We are looking at a future of a state. We are looking at a future of a idea of what India managed to defeat at stake. And
Yeah,
the fact is, we can't just let it go easily. So i i,
exactly.
I completely agree. But thank you, Rohit. This has been a very informative part two podcast on this. I mean, it's. I say it part two. It's not going to be advertised as part two. I want to, but please watch the first one and watch this in conjunction, because आप अकेले देखोगे तो मजा नहीं आएगा. But I would like to leave you any recommendations you have for our viewers, and why while you're thinking of one, I'll give you one. There is a
Yeah.
um,
Good question.
cricket corruption documentary on Netflix, on how the match fixing and things were was exposed, and Azharuddin ka kya tab hua tha, and did anything happen to him and stuff. What is interesting in that, I mean, watch that documentary. What's interesting is the sports minister quoted is a gentleman called Sukhdev Singh Dindsa, who happened to be from the Shiromani Akali Dal, one of the strongest leaders, I would say, of the Shiromani Akali Dal. And then subsequently fell off, and I think he's no longer around. But um he used to be, and this is why I want to give a perspective, he used to be a member of parliament from Sangrur from 2004. But here's the thing: the man who was in as the member of parliament from Sangrur in 1999 was a man called Simranjit Singh Man. And it was a shock that he won. And then we had thought that we Indian state had managed to keep him at bay. Come to 2022, he's again the MP of Sangrur again. So I'm just saying,
Yes.
watch that
And
documentary और वहां से यहाँ तक
also
आ
the
गए हम
fun
लोग.
part about Dhinsa, since you mentioned him, he now leads a party called the Sanyukt Akali Dal,
हाँ.
which
Wait, so that's why. So
is an
the reason I
ally
said
of
no
the
longer.
BJP in Punjab,
Yes, yes. So that's why I
and
said
also has
when
BB
I said
Jagir
no
Kaur
longer
in it.
around, I didn't mean in active politics. I meant no longer
No, no,
around in the Akali
I'm
Dal.
just
I
saying,
have to
and he's
clarify.
an ally of, I mean, and BB Jagir Kaur has also joined that party, by the way. So,
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. Let's Padma Bhushan Shri Sukhdev Singh Dindsa was also awarded
yes,
the Padma Bhushan in
yes.
2019, but he was a minister of chemical fertilizers, and then I don't know if he was and sports from 2000 to 2004. So
Yeah, yeah, he was a
old,
very
old
active
old hands.
minister in the Vajpayee
Yeah.
government for sure. I remember that.
Correct, and his son became the finance minister after Parminder Singh Dindsa. So,
Mm.
fascinating. And then I think he returned his Padma Bhushan during the farmers' protest. That's what the
Yeah, yeah, he
news.
did, he did.
Yeah.
And
So I
then
don't know.
joined the BJP. I mean, क्या बोले आगे?
Yeah. So it's completely that's the state of the
So
Punjab
my
politics. But Rohit,
recommendation this week is a very heavy one for
mm,
those who have not, and I think Sunanda, your friend, will
oh
love it.
yes,
My Frozen
oh
Turbulences in
beautiful.
Kashmir by the late Governor Jagmohan. The
Mhm.
reason why I am pointing this with respect to the discussion today is because if you read this book, you will be very worried even now about
Yes,
Punjab and not Kashmir. Let's put it this way. कश्मीर का तो अलग ही एक बहुत बड़ा पॉडकास्ट होगा. Maybe me and Sunanda will get me and Sunanda to talk about it in a long
yes,
chapter one.
absolutely. Chapter one. I mean, the series, a series,
Yeah,
pura.
exactly, exactly. But point is the reason why I'm saying this because, as I said earlier, there were elements of subversion in the Kashmir administration that were responsible for flaring the terrorist movement all the time and letting it slip whenever, letting people slip whenever they were about to be trapped. And my worry is that in it, we've seen that in the late 80s in Punjab as well. We might see it again. This might have been a case of that just as well. So
Yes.
I am being very cagey. It's not about people. I mean, there are elements that need to be that we really need to take account for. Some not about in the proverbial sense. Some heads need to roll now.
No, yes, there has to be some accountability. वो Kashmir podcast तो पक्का होगा. And I'm sure this recommendation I has been given so many times, but we always get new viewers, and I always recommend keep reading these books because
Yeah.
and again I've said this about a million times, but also read Mrs. Gandhi's Last Battle by Mark Tully,
Yep. Yep.
and I
Definitely.
will quote this Mark Tully quote that I absolutely love. मैंने दिमाग में डाल दिया है, where he said Mrs. Gandhi's problem wasn't that she did too little too late. Her biggest problem was she did too much too late. And that's
Yep.
exactly the problem that happened in
Exactly.
Blue Star. Uh, I don't think we are there yet, but I hope and I pray that we are never there yet and things
I
get
hope.
sorted out before.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that hopeful
Definitely.
note, I end this podcast. Thank you, Rohit, for joining. If you are
Always a
concerned after
pleasure.
this, you should be,
Always a
guys.
pleasure, Aadit.
हम लोग मस्ती मजाक करते रहते हैं, and our job is to provide all the facts as entertainingly as we possibly
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
But this is a really, really big issue. It concerns me deeply. It should concern you as well. Go ask your questions of your representatives. If you have any questions, write to us. But please, please pray for Punjab. Pray for all the citizens and pray for all the people who are bravely standing up to these Khalistanis,
Yep.
be it in the diaspora, be it in India.
Exactly.
That my heart goes out to the Gujarati man in London who took all sorts of things, or Lalit Kejha in Washington DC or New York, I forget where it was, where he got attacked, or the people in San Francisco, and the Indian embassies and the Indian consulates wherever they are.
Yep.
More power to you guys, and more power to all of you on that. So thank you, Rohit, for joining, and we'll be back next week, guys. Please like, share, subscribe, follow Rohit on Twitter. We'll tag him for sure, and fight a couple of Khalistanis on Twitter on his behalf. He gets enough hate mail already for
Yeah.
speaking his mind. He's been very brave coming on our podcast, so thank you for that. And please subscribe, and please listen to all these. ये किस्सा ये नहीं कि 2 घंटे में खत्म होगा. Rohit did a wonderful podcast with Arihant on it. Please watch that also. Uh, there are so many points that we wanted to cover that we haven't covered, and that's why I'm going on a bit of a longer rant than I do at the end. Ki, um, this debate, this discussion can only start after we've all read and come to that conclusion about what we want and stuff. So
Yeah.
please keep reading, please keep opining, and together we will, make change, or we will inflict some sort of questions on people.
Yeah.
So, with that note, I'll end this podcast. We'll be back next week with more, or maybe later this week with definitely a Karnataka elections podcast. So stay tuned. Thanks, guys.